Okay, I start off in a state of debt, since I have to answer Tsering's question, the question he brought up just at the very end of the main session, and that is how right view helps to eliminate wrong defilements. As I said, it's a pretty big topic, pretty big area, because there are different levels of right view and different levels of defilements. So let's say one level of defilement is the level where they motivate unwholesome action, unwise, unskillful action. So when one has the right view of karma and its results, then one understands that if one engages in unwholesome actions, immoral, unskillful actions, that they're going to bring some kind of undesirable consequences to oneself. Whereas if one follows for example, the 10 types of wholesome action, of wise action, not killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and so on, then it's going to bring favorable results. So with this right understanding of karma and its results, then it will give you some motivation for restraining the defilements that tend to break out and to motivate unwholesome action. Okay, then if one has, with the right view of insight, let's say, the right view into the 3 characteristics, impermanence, suffering, non-self, this will help to control attachment and also maybe to control the tendency to swing between the two. Usually our minds swing between the 2 extremes of getting excited and joyful and then attached to the pleasant things, and then getting upset and miserable and dejected when we meet with disagreeable situations. So if we get praise, then we're happy, I'm the greatest. If we get blamed, criticized, oh, I feel so miserable. If we get wealth, then we feel like we're the king of the world. If we lose the wealth, then we get miserable. But if we have the right view, say, just of impermanence, then we know that this is the nature of the world, things are changing. So if we get wealthy, we get praised, we get fame, whatever, then we don't get elated because we know it's impermanent. And then if we get, if we meet with misfortune, misery, poverty, criticism, and so on, then we don't get upset because as long as we're doing the right thing, then we just know that this is the nature of the world and this is impermanent too. Maybe it will change. And at any rate, because we have the right view of non-self, we don't refer this to ourselves thinking, if I accomplish something worthwhile, that I'm great, I'm important, I'm the big shot, the big fish. And if, we're not so successful in what we're doing, then we don't take it out on ourselves. We don't feel that I'm worthless, I'm good for nothing, I'm a failure. But we just recognize we have some good qualities, bad qualities, skills in some areas, shortcomings in other areas, and we just make the effort to improve ourselves. So based on this right view. And so that way we get rid of clinging to the pleasant and aversion, fear, worry about the unpleasant. So that's the right view of insight. Just a few examples. And then with the right view, the supramundane or the world-transcending right view, that is the right view that at the deepest level cuts off the defilements so that they can't arise again. So with each of the 4 different levels of realization, one cuts off a certain layer of defilements, and then once those layers of defilements are cut off, it's said that they're cut off at the root, unable to arise again. After the class, people are coming up to me and saying, what about this? What about that? So I say, let's leave it for the discussion period.
Mate, can you, I never really thought about it, obviously, but the two views, the view for the preliminaries and the world-transcending. And the preliminary, is that what leads to Sotapanna?
Is it what leads to a Sotapanna? Okay, what we find in the suttas, when the definitions of right view are given, in most of the suttas, just accepting this one, we find two ways of explaining right view. Usually two ways. One is the very, what we'll call this the very basic preliminary right view, which is the right view of there is giving, there is offering, there is charity, there is good results of good and bad deeds, there is the responsibility to mother and father, there's this world, the other world. So this we could just call the right view of karma and its fruit. So that is the very basic preliminary right view. And then the other way right view is normally explained in the suttas is in the context of the Noble Eightfold Path, where it's explained as understanding suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path. So that's the right view of the Four Noble Truths. Some other passages in the suttas also give as a right view the understanding of the three characteristics about impermanence, suffering, non-self. So the way I would group them or classify them. Okay, the right view of karma and its fruit, as I said, is the very basic preliminary right view. The right view of insight of the three characteristics, impermanence, suffering, non-self, this is still considered, in this scheme, it's still considered preliminary or preparatory because it's still working with in the world of the five aggregates. Though it's, of course, it's deeper than the right view of karma and its results. But it is that right view of insight into the three characteristics which is leading up to the world-transcending right view. So that's as the practice of insight gets deeper and sharper and clearer, when all of the person's spiritual faculties are mature, then it will break or emerge into the world-transcending right view. One reaches the world-transcending path, and then at the leading that path is the right view of realization. That would be the right view of, at the first level, the right view of stream entry, of the path of stream entry. But then there's the question, what about the right view of the Four Noble Truths that's mentioned as the standard definition in relation to the Noble Eightfold Path? I would say that we can understand the right view of the Four Noble Truths at two levels, the preliminary level and the world-transcending level. At the preliminary level, the right view of the Four Noble Truths is first the right view that we acquire conceptually through study of the teaching, reflection on the teaching. Then we get an intellectual right view of the Four Noble Truths. Then as one practices insight meditation, then this right view of the Four Noble Truths becomes experiential, and it's still within the broad class of preparatory right view. But now it's becoming the experiential understanding of the Four Noble Truths. But still, because it's dealing with insight into the five aggregates, it's still in the preliminary stage. But then when that right view of the Four Noble Truths emerges, so that one is directly seeing the ultimate truth, that is nirvana, then it becomes the world-transcending right view. And at that point, one understands all Four Noble Truths simultaneously.
You can't have right view without right concentration. You can't have right concentration without right view, or because why did the Buddhists start out in the? Sorry, when it said is noble right concentration with its supports and its requisites.
Well, here, when the Buddha is speaking about noble right concentration, when we look at this discourse as a whole, it's pretty clear that he's speaking about the world-transcending right concentration, which when it arises, this would be the concentration which is fixed on nibbana, and it arises together with the factors, the other factors of the Noble Eightfold Path simultaneously, present simultaneously. But in terms of day-to-day practice, one can have right view of the very basic right view of the understanding of karma and its fruit without having right concentration. Not to speak about the world-transcending right concentration, without even the jhana experience, one can have that right view. And one could be building up the right view of insight. Of course, for the insight knowledges to arise, one needs some degree of concentration, but that concentration doesn't have to be very deep or profound to have the right view of insight. But it's when for the world-transcending right view to occur, it has to occur simultaneously with the right concentration, because that's the right concentration of the really noble world-transcending path. Okay, Bo Wei has a question.
Bhante, in your explanation of the right energy and right mindfulness, you also include the two levels. Is the supermundane level described in the sutta, or you just supplemented it from the Abhidharma or the commentaries?
Okay, she's asking whether the supermundane level of right effort and right mindfulness are described in the sutta. Interestingly, if you've read the whole sutta, you see that it goes up in its analysis of the path factors only through right livelihood. And so it doesn't give a separate explanation of right effort, right mindfulness, or right concentration. And so just in my understanding or interpretation, I would say that right effort and right mindfulness also have to function at the two levels. The level of in conjunction with the preparatory path, where there's the effort to overcome wrong view and to acquire right view, and mindfulness that accompanies the elimination of wrong view and acquiring right view. So that would be right effort, right mindfulness of the preliminary or preparatory stage. And then there will be, together with the breakthrough experience of realization, the world-transcending path, that has to have right effort and right mindfulness. So that would be the world-transcending right effort and right mindfulness. In fact, I think one of these yeah, it's the Tibetan version of this Mahacattarisaka Sutta. has these formal definitions of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And interestingly, it uses the Abhidharma type of method of explanation for these three factors. Like, what is right effort? Endeavoring, not, it's just like a string of synonyms. Endeavoring, not procrastinating, exertion, endeavoring, non-discouragement, not becoming easily satisfied. This is right effort. Then what is right mindfulness? Whatever mindfulness there is, recollection, various kinds of mindfulness, non-forgetful mindfulness, absence of forgetfulness, sustained noting of the mind. This is reckoned as right mindfulness. Then what is right concentration? The calm dwelling of the mind, still abiding, manifest still abiding, essential still abiding, non-distraction, right collectedness, tranquility, concentration, one-pointedness of the mind. This is right concentration. So that is really almost like straight out of the Abhidharma system. But you could actually see from these kind of definitions how the Abhidharma, at least in the early stage, would have emerged. It would come by taking the terms, the words used in the suttas, and then finding from the Indian vocabulary of the period, just like a string of, like a thesaurus, giving a whole bunch of other synonyms for that term. So that could be perhaps making it intelligible for people who would understand through a different term than the standard passage uses. Hongla, that's your name?
Could you give me, what's an example of wrong concentration?
This is somewhat interesting, that even though the 8 wrongnesses are mentioned in the suttas, of course we have a definition of wrong view, but the definition of wrong view is the denial of karmic causation. But we don't have a definition of wrong view, which is the opposite of the view of the Four Noble Truths. It's a bit of a puzzle. We do have definition of wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood. I think there's no formal definition of wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and in most cases, no formal definition of wrong concentration, except there's one sutta, number 108, where the word used is not concentration, but jhana, meditation.
Would it be concentration on or meditation on wholesome?
Yeah. Well, we'll look at the passage together. This is on page 885. This is after the Buddha's passing away. Venerable Ananda is having a conversation with a Brahmin, and the Brahmin praises the Buddha. He says, the Buddha Gautama was a meditator, and he praised every type of meditation. But then Ananda says that the Buddha didn't praise every type of meditation. And then he says, what kind of meditation did the Buddha not praise? And then he says, someone dwells with his mind obsessed by sensual lust. He harbors sensual lust within, then he meditates, premeditates, outmeditates, mismeditates. Then he abides with his mind obsessed by ill will, the mind obsessed by sloth and torpor, the mind obsessed by restlessness and remorse, obsessed by doubt, and then he meditates, out-meditates, pre-meditates with the mind obsessed by doubt. So basically it would be the mind which is overrun by the 5 hindrances, except that normally we don't think of that, the 5 hindrances as distractions or obstacles to concentration, not forms of concentration. But maybe we could understand that to be wrong concentration.
Thank you.
But, not looking at the suttas, but just using our sort of reflection, we could think maybe a general who's planning a strategy in war might have like his whole mind absorbed in the strategy. We send this battalion there, or this platoon there, that platoon here, and we have aircraft coming above, bombing. Somebody comes in and says, "General, your tea is ready." He doesn't even hear. He's just so absorbed in, planning the strategy for the battle. And then maybe we have the Don Juan or Casanova who's seeing a beautiful new woman, and so he's sitting at his desk thinking about the new woman and imagining her in his mind's eye, and he's completely absorbed in his thoughts of her. So that might be a kind of concentration, wrong concentration. Okay. What is your name, by the way?
My name is Paul.
Paul.
Usually, Venerable Anadli will do a kind of condense the suttas he's reviewing and to see the commonality of, in this case it sounds like there's 3 suttas that
Actually, he covers 1, 2, 3. I think that there were 4 altogether.
okay.
3 from Chinese, 1 from Tibetan.
I know you just started the sutta, but could you share a little bit on his findings between the 4 comparisons?
I think I covered pretty much the essential points already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
Because just the discussion of right view illustrates what's the essential difference is that the sutta, which is the Chinese parallel to the Mahacattarisaka, to the Great 40, doesn't make the distinction in the right factors between the mundane right factor and the world-transcending right factor. It just uses pretty much the standard definitions that we find in other suttas of the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. So that is the direct parallel, Chinese parallel, to the Pali version. But there are 2 other suttas that come in the Chinese Sangyuttagama. That's the parallel to the Sutta Nikaya. That's the one called the Sutta on Right and Wrong, which do make the distinction. I read that passage on right view. They make the distinction, very similar distinction, between the preliminary, preparatory right view and the world-transcending right view. And then there's a Tibetan version, which, as I said just a few minutes ago, additionally it defines right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration using this string of Abhidharma type synonyms. But his paper here, it's pretty dense and covers a lot of material. So somebody asked me to write the title on the board. I'll do that when we finish the discussion. Or you could just come up and copy right off here.
The Tibetan The Tibetan definition of right effort didn't sound like the traditional definition of right effort, which is really focuses on wholesome and unwholesomeness.
Yeah. That's why I said that this is not a sutta style of definition,
right.
but this is the way that definitions come in the Abhidharma.
Right.
Let me just jump the gun. Where did I put it? Yeah, this is from the Vibhanga. This is the Pali Abhidharma work, where they're analyzing the path factors according to the Abhidharma method rather than the sutta method. Then it says, what is right effort? That which is the arousing of mental energy. Then this particular passage has been condensed or abridged because the definition has come earlier. But it comes in this string of synonyms. That which is the arousing of mental energy, probably it will say things like mental energy, being energetic, applying energy, striving, applying oneself, endeavoring, and then ending the enlightenment factor of energy, the path constituent of energy, right effort. This is called right effort. So it's a similar way defining in terms of a series of synonyms.
And very similar to the Tibetan
exactly,
definition.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, we'll have time for one more question.
Bhante, it's a question on right views again. With the right views, you explain that it's related to the understanding of the three characteristics and also in the Four Noble Truths. Could you please explain how these three characteristics are related to the Four Noble Truths?
Briefly, I think I would say that the three characteristics would be ways of looking at the noble truth of suffering. So we have the three characteristics: impermanence. So things are subject to arising and passing away. That's the meaning of impermanence. And because things are subject to arising and passing away, they are dukkha, which doesn't mean literally suffering, but unsatisfactory or defective. And so that connects directly to the noble truth of suffering, or the noble truth of dukkha. And then things are not self, and yet we cling to things as being I and mine, myself. And so that causes frustration, dissatisfaction, worry, concern. So many manifestations of suffering come from clinging to a self. And so we could say that non-self becomes a way, a counteractive to the suffering that comes from clinging to thoughts or ideas of I and mine. So in that way it relates to, on the one hand, it relates to the noble truth of suffering, but also contemplation of impermanence, suffering, and non-self come under the superior preliminary right view. And so in that way they will relate to the fourth noble truth as part of the fourth noble truth, the objects of insight, or the topics of insight that are to be developed in order to bring to maturity the right view of the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, so that will be our class for today. So let's end with 3 half bows to the Buddha. Oh, I didn't look at the, oh.
The question was, those questions you was asked before, and you said you were going to write the name of the book before.
Yeah, I'll do that. He'll have to be patient. We give him an opportunity to practice patience.
Thank you, Bhante, for that.
Okay, I'll write the name of that book. Yeah, because it's published by a Taiwan publisher, so in the US, I guess the best way to get a copy is through the distributor, the Chan Meditation Center in New York. You look that up on the internet. It's in Queens, yeah. Excuse me? Oh, you inquired already. Really? From the New York Center? Or from Taiwan? Wow. So maybe it's by now a second printing has come out. I don't know. But anyway, in time, I think a second printing will appear. Okay, so we end with 3 half bows. Wow.